Bill, is there somebody that was impactful that you've missed since then that was killed in action?
Yeah, it's John Hayes. I got a picture of him here. John was, at the beach. The beach is where Second Recon Battalion was. He was there when we all took the indoc and became ropes, which is basically your rite of passage. Before you're a recon Marine, you're a rope. And, he was that guy. He's one of the guys you meet. And, when you're a rope, he's not your favorite person, obviously. This is a guy who, was tough. On the same token, you had kind of those two different types of guys when you were getting brought up. The really loud guys that screamed at you and just made you feel worthless. And, and then you had guys like John who were that silent professional. And he demanded perfection. And don't get me wrong, if you were doing something stupid, you paid for it. But on the same token, he would sit down with you and say, all right, what are you struggling with? Let's teach you. And it's pretty wild being that, E2 that just got into the unit. You haven't even been to school, you're not MOS qualified, and you got a legend sitting there and saying, I'll help you with that. And it was really just kind of surreal. This was, from the get-go, he's the father figure, if you will. And then as you grow up in this community, you realize that this guy that was helping you is truly a legend in the community. And I'm not the only person that says that. You can go and you read articles about John and stuff like that, and all the comments are, this guy is a legend. And he really impacted all of our lives so dramatically just from his leadership style and his humility. And he's the type of guy that when he walked in a room, he didn't need to pound his chest and be like, hey, look at me. He just walked in and everyone kind of went, oh, he's the real deal. So that was just kind of crazy, And I remember, I wrote an article on SOFREP about it, and it was really a defining moment in my recon career, which was, we had been to recon school, and I think I had already been to Ranger school and stuff like that. And but you're still, you're still new. You're still kind of a charity.
Ranger school, not qualified.
Exactly. Ranger school, not battalion.
Jack wants to get that out of it.
And actually, John helped shave my head before I went to school, as we all had to get our heads shaved. But he knocked on, me and my buddy Joey were roommates, and he knocked on our door, and you're thinking, okay, this is, John Hayes, and you're just thinking he's going to ask you something. And next thing you know, he walks in our room and sits down, and we start shooting the breeze. And next thing you know, we're drinking beers, and you start thinking, you're like, this was the moment I became an official member of the club. When a guy like this basically says, all right, we are now equal. We are now brothers in arms, and you're not a rope anymore, you're not a cherry, you are one of us. And it's a really kind of, I'm sure you guys have that moment when you're like, I'm official, man, I'm part of the club. So it was pretty wild. That's one of those memories. And there's a lot of memories. His platoon, when we were ropes, they asked the guys who ran the ropes, like, hey, can we take these guys out to PT? And yeah, it was heinous, to say the least. And it was one of those things that after that day, they worked us so hard that after that day, even though we were still ropes, they had a little bit of respect for us. And it started to climb, just because, they put it to us, and we all didn't quit, basically. Everyone knows that's what it's about. They will push you so hard.
Yeah.
They want you to quit, and when they realize you're not going to, it's a different ballgame. But he was, like I said, he was just that guy that always was willing to take that extra time to teach you something. And he was stern, but also very giving in his knowledge, because he had a ton of knowledge.
So where were you when you found out he was killed?
Actually, Jack and I were kind of talking about this because I was out of the service, and I had a lag time there, and I had already been a contractor and was back home, but I had a kind of bad habit, if you will, of checking the DoD press releases daily, and I saw his name, and I remember I picked up the phone and called my buddy that was still active, and I said, "Is this our John Hayes?" And he said, "Yes," and sorry.
It has to be surreal. Jack went through the same thing.
Yeah. It was
somebody you look up to that you think could not be that vulnerable to be killed.
Well, no, and what I said was, you got to be kidding me. This guy is Superman. it can't be him. It's not possible.
Right.
Because from our standpoint, he's a hero, a legend.
Yeah.
And just held so far up there that it was truly devastating. It was a crushing feeling to realize that he's not coming home.
And this doesn't happen to legends. It's not supposed to.
No, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. This doesn't happen to superheroes.
Yeah.
So it was rough, and then we a lot of guys, if you've been out for a while, because these guys have been in a little more recently than I have, and when you've been out for a while, there's a lot of guys you don't talk to for years and years and years. And when we met up at Arlington to bury John, it was it's like a crazy family reunion, and you've talked to these guys yesterday, even though you haven't seen them in years, and it was really cool. Everyone kind of came together, and it was just telling stories about John and how he impacted you. And the other really cool thing was meeting the young Marines that were under his command when he got killed, because they're looking at us like, whoa, you knew him when he was Sergeant Hayes, and now he's
Yeah.
Master Sergeant Hayes. It was a really kind of cool give and take of
How many people he affected.
how many people he impacted. And it wasn't, it was us, he raised us, but then he just kept raising young recon Marines. And, he's one of those guys that really impacted the community as a whole. And, I think it's just a huge loss to the recon community.
It's just, I think, important for people to understand, and even surreal for me sitting here, understanding how much of a positive impact that these people have on so many people throughout all the different community, and it's just such a tribute to their character. One of the amazing things that just sitting here, it's surreal for me, is just looking at these incredible people and how many lives they've touched in such a positive way, and I think that's a big takeaway for all of us, and for anyone watching, that these are such amazing people, and they've had such a positive impact on how they've lived their life, and it's neat to share these stories. And oftentimes, I've been to a memorial recently for my friend Glenn, and telling these military stories that these families just never get to hear, because when you're active, these guys are going overseas, and you have the brotherhood, and there's stuff that we talk about, and these from the crazy stories to the when you get into the mentorship stuff that the families just never hear about. So I think it's neat to do shows like this and honor these heroes and share the stories with everybody, because it really just makes sure that the legacy of these great individuals live on through the stories that we tell. And that's why Jack and I have had conversations about guys getting out and writing books, and it's not an easy thing to get out and tell a story or write a book, because sometimes people that are still active, they don't understand. But what is important is that we capture these stories and make sure that these guys' legacies live on, in my opinion.
I also think that one of the things is, as we talk about these guys, it's really humbling. Like you look at them and their careers and their lives, and you just, it really humbles you. And you realize that, though I wasn't, in Afghanistan with John, I had already gotten out and I was a contractor, but you realize the type of person that you work with, and that you realize that you like I said, these are all tough guys and everyone knows their job. But then when something like this, you start to realize the true caliber of these men that you served next to, and it's, like I said, it's humbling. I guess it's humbling for me to be even in the same family and the same association with these.
You don't think
guys.
about it at the time, but looking back on it, you realize you really were working with the very best that America had to offer. You were very lucky to be with that group of people.
The thing we can't forget, I'm going to kind of caveat of what Brandon just said, is that the people who write the books, and I understand, because there are points in time where you kind of get frustrated and go, why do they need to tell that story? But then on the flip side, you go, that's therapy. That's great therapy for these folks. There's a lot of information that's in their brains. Those filing cabinets are full of stuff, and it's therapy for them to be able to release it, and release it in a way that they can honor the individuals that we're talking about, or somebody who's played an important role in their life, or multiple people. But the other thing I find interesting is that when we're young and we look up to individuals like this, we forget that they were in our position at one point. So who were the people that they looked up to help them identify who they are? So really, the things that we're talking about are living legacies that we've had through our military history. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. It goes from, we go back to Vietnam. I can tell you countless stories of guys who have had a huge impact on my life. And then from there was World War II, or the Korean War, the World War II, World War I. It's part of our legacy. And it's amazing that it just lives on.
I mean, I wrote The Red Circle, which is my time in life in the SEAL community, but to go to a charity event and have Donna Axelson, Matt Axelson, who lost his life, and it was chronicled in Lone Survivor, to have her come up and give me a big hug and go, look, I've never heard those stories about my son before, to get an email from Mike Bearden's father, and Mike was one of my close friends who died in a parachute accident after we went through sniper school, and his dad to randomly pick up my book in Barnes & Noble, open it up, read it, and find out his son is there, and those unique stories about Mike and his time in sniper school. And he was like, I can't thank you enough. Like, I was just moved to tears, and I wasn't expecting that. So to me, that's what it's all about, and why I like to write and capture these stories and share it, whether it's on shows like this or in books.
Well, I think the other thing is that a lot of these guys have families; they're family men, and I think how really special is it that when their kids get older, they can read a book or read an article or watch something and say, they're talking about my dad, and this is the type of man my dad was. And I just, to me, I think that's important, and I think we need to make sure that these guys, their stories and their legacy continues on, because these are the guys that, for me, John is one of the guys who raised me and really helped make me the man I am. So, I think how cool is that his kids can, I guess, know and realize, and I'm not, it doesn't make it better, but I think it at least helps to know that their father was... His
contribution.
He's a legend. He's a hero. I think that's important.
And there's a lot of talk too in the public about the average American doesn't understand what's going on in the war. They don't understand the sacrifices, and the only way they can understand is if veterans start to articulate some of that to the public and relay some of that information. And I hope that that's what we're doing here today.
So, Bill, can you tell us a little bit about the shirt you're wearing today?
Yeah, it's actually a shirt. That's helping raise money for one of our friends, Eden Pearl. Actually, soon after John was killed, got a phone call saying that Eden had been severely injured in combat in Afghanistan. Eden is considered by many to be one of the most severely injured servicemen to actually make it and survive. He's a triple amputee. He was burned on 90% of his body, and he is a fighter. And there's an organization called Brothers in Arms Foundation that is raising money to build Eden and his family an accessible house. So obviously I support that. We've done some fundraisers, to caveat on their efforts. So, and that's the other thing, is that there's a lot of guys that don't get talked about because they survived. Yeah. And I think that it's really important for people to realize that, there's guys that are still alive that gave everything. And, I think that it's very difficult to see your buddies, these, huge, strong, guys that you used to PT with and make you look like, a weak person, because they would just,
Was he one of those?
Yes, he was.
And it's so tough for those guys who are ruck marching every day, fast roping out of helicopters and parachuting, and now they're laid up at Walter Reed.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, yes, he was that guy. I mean, he was
the guy recently that you guys did the 5K.
That was Michael Schlitz. He was a ranger instructor down at Ranger School, and his vehicle, his Humvee in Iraq, was hit by an IED. He was ejected from the vehicle, burned over about 80% of his body, had to have both of his arms removed, and I think he just underwent his 80th surgery just this last week. But Michael's an absolutely amazing guy, in the same category with Joe Kapicheski.
Yeah.
He's an inspirational figure to all of us, and especially the guys who are coming home wounded, who are coming home in pieces. That you can be successful.
and these guys they're fighters.
Yeah,
and
no,
that's,
they are.
I mean,
Yeah.
they are fighters. They, they don't give up. That's not in our blood.
Yeah.
So all these guys, I mean, they've made it past some really odds that aren't with them.
Yeah.
And really from the civilian side, we've heard a lot of doctors talk about Eden and said, if he wasn't a special operator, just because you're in the shape of a professional athlete, basically, if he wasn't a special operator, he wouldn't have made it from Germany back to the States, let alone, gone through and really pulled through. So, yeah, it's, this war impacts a lot more than just the guys we've lost. It's a lot of guys are never the same.
And you'd call them heroes, but we'd embarrass them if we said that.
Yes, they would. They would tell you to shut up if you called them a hero, but there are heroes.